I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chair Waves. My guest today is Julianne Roth, who is joining us from Hartford, Connecticut. Not terribly far from where I grew up in New York City, a couple hours away. And she is a Vistage chair with 2 CE groups, and she also has a horse farm, which is I don't think that we've actually had a Vistage chair on this program before who was running an actual horse farm with animals, and that's a very cool side business, and we'll have to talk about that. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy and excited to be here.
So your background is before you were a Vistage chair, before you were an executive coach. You ran a home care company, and I would love to hear how you ended up there, and then I would love to hear how that sort of brought you to Vistage ultimately. What was that transition like? So, how did you get into that industry?
It's a long story. I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
I started my career first out of college. I had the entrepreneurial bug early. I wrote a business plan my last semester of college in an entrepreneurship class that I took, and it sounded so good on paper that I went for it. And I did it for about 6 months, but I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know a lot. So that business wound up failing in about 6 months, and I went into the corporate world. I spent close to 20 years in the corporate world, and then realized after I was actually laid off with about 400 people one day, and realized after about 3 days after licking my wounds that I hated what I was doing. And I'd been hating it, and I wanted to get back to my entrepreneurial roots. I was not cut out for the corporate thing. So I
have to ask, what was the business that you started out of college that failed?
I was a little bit premature before I've had a business that is now very popular, but back then it was a little premature. I had an errand running service. So think Instacart.
Yep.
A little bit broader, where I would even go so far as driving someone's dog to the groomer or driving someone's daughter to dance class, things like that. Grocery shopping. So it was, and I had a couple of people that worked part-time for me, but like I said, I didn't know anything back then. I was just a kid.
Then yes, that would have been definitely ahead of its time. Very cool.
Yep. So after I left the corporate world, I wanted to get back to my entrepreneurial roots, and I wanted to do something where I knew I was making a difference, where I was making an impact. And so I didn't know what that was going to look like. If it was something with children or helping animals, or something where I felt where my bleeding heart could, feel like I was doing some good. And so I came upon a business that was for sale in the home care space, and it was not the right fit for a multitude of reasons that I won't get into here. And then I found another one also for sale. Again, not a good fit for me. So I decided to start my own. And that was in 2005. It was probably May or June that I started working on my business plan. And I launched it the day that my kids went back to school in September of 2005.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. What was, you originally had looked for businesses to buy, you ended up starting your own. That obviously is a whole different journey. Going back in time, are you glad that it happened that way, or would you have said, no, I really wish I could have gotten one that already existed and already had the cash flow and all that.
Yeah. So I was a single mom at the time, which is why I was looking at buying a business because I needed the cash flow. Um, Doing it on my own is the best move I could have ever made. So, and for reasons being that I learned so much doing it that way that I probably would have failed some things along the way had I bought something from someone else because I just didn't know. And so I was able to scale it from nothing and learn as I was going. So I think that building it from scratch was definitely, in hindsight, it was very, very much the way to go.
And I see the note here that that company was in the top 4% in your industry for both client and employee satisfaction. How how did you get there from a startup and from learning a whole new industry from scratch?
It was really important to me that we be the quality provider in the area. So home care is typically a hyper local type of business, and it was. I serviced for the most part just the Hartford County area, and I didn't sacrifice anything for quality. Quality was most important. I'd rather lose a client knowing that I was able to maintain my quality standards. If they were asking us to do things that were going to compromise our quality in any way, I'd rather refuse the client. So by keeping those really tight controls over the business and making sure that my team felt like they were really part of a team, which again was a very different mode of operation in that industry, at least back in that time. I think those two things really helped us to keep really nice flow of everything. And then as a result, we really cared. We really did all the things we needed to do to make sure that our clients were getting the best care and my staff was getting the best possible treatment.
So you built the business, you grew the business, and then you sold the business. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you?
The selling the business? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. And that process, and I'm sure that your Vistage members appreciate that you've had that experience, but that's a really difficult process for a lot of people to go through. How was it for you?
Difficult, for sure. But exhilarating at the same time. And I accomplished the goal that I wanted to accomplish, which is that I was making an impact, a positive impact in this world. And I felt really good about what I was doing. So as a result, it was a tremendous process. And then selling the business, I didn't even know how to begin to sell a business. This company, it was a national company, and the industry was doing a lot of consolidating at the time that I sold the business. I was on the front end of that consolidation wave. And this national company approached me and wanted to buy the business. And so that was a really emotional thing because having grown it from its infancy, it is like a baby. And so I wound up spending a transition year. They offered me, I could stay as long as I wanted. I could leave right away. It was up to me. So I decided to give it a 1-year transition period so that I could make sure that my clients and my staff were going to be transitioned well and that they'd be taken care of. And boy, after I sold the business and, well, first of all, reporting to somebody else, that was that was a whole new chapter all over again. So after 15 years of running my own company, it was a really interesting process, and letting go of the business and knowing that the decisions, even though the decisions weren't necessarily those that I would make, they weren't bad decisions. It's not necessarily the way I would have gone. Having the humility to say, okay, it's not mine anymore.
Right.
And I need to go along with what the company's looking for. That was an interesting period of time for me. And then the last day that I was there, walking into the abyss of not knowing what was coming next in my life. That was a very interesting time in my life. It was all right after COVID, by the way, right
Oh,
after the initial
wow.
COVID bubble. Yeah.
Wow.
The company approached me to buy my company right in July of 2020. So we had just gone through all of the COVID craziness. So that
That's
was,
that is actually in a lot of ways remarkable, and I guess good on you for making it work, because I imagine that would have been a really difficult time to be dealing with something that big.
um, it was a relief in a lot of ways, having gone through that. If you can imagine taking care of elderly people in their homes
Yeah.
during COVID, um, it was one of the most challenging parts of I've ever most challenging. It probably was the most challenging thing I ever experienced in my career. In
Wow.
hindsight, it was intense. So while most people had one kind of COVID experience, I had a very different kind of experience.
COVID was one of those things that a lot of us. I mean, it was one of those times that everybody felt a little bit differently, and yeah, that's a lot to be dealing with. So you sold the business, you stayed on for a little while, and before transitioning out, what led you ultimately to Vistage?
When I was transitioning out, was I struggled to come up with what it was that my next chapter was going to look like. I was too young to retire, and I wanted to continue to make a difference. I wanted to continue learning and growing. And so that's what I did is I came up with, and I've counseled, by the way, I've counseled my members on this because I've got several members who are approaching or have already sold a business um, in that transition period of their lives. And one of the best pieces of advice that somebody gave me years ago is never to retire to get away from something. You should always retire to go towards something else. And so what that something else was I was stumped. I didn't know what that was going to be. But what I did was I gave myself a break of about 3 months that I wasn't going to do anything. It's the first time in my adult life I hadn't worked. So I was just going to enjoy the horse farm. We had just bought it that year. And not do anything. But of course, the way my brain works, it's always percolating. It's always in there.
Right.
And so I came up with 4 criteria, and this is a process that I've worked with some of my members on. Um, 4 criteria that were important to me in whatever the next chapter was going to look like. And once I had those nailed down, I had 3 opportunities that just kind of presented themselves to me. And Vistage was one of them. And it met those criteria in a much larger way than the other 2 did. So that's how I decided to move forward with Vistage. I had been part of a peer group for women only organization for the last 4 years that I owned my company. So I was familiar with the peer group model. I found, though, that the Vistage model is a lot richer
Mm-hmm.
and better than the experience that I had with the other organization.
Oh, well, that's very cool. So, what was did you build? Were we still? I guess we would have been out of COVID by the time you were building your first group.
Yeah, I started, so 3 years ago, 3 years ago this month was when I went through Academy 1 and started building my first group in October of 2022, launched it in March of 2023.
Very cool. So about
Yeah,
2.5 years in. How has it been?
yeah, yeah. 2.5 years since we launched. It's been the most incredible journey. I love what I do. I love this role. It's so rewarding and fulfilling. I can't imagine a better way to have a capstone to my career.
Very cool.
Yeah,
That's a wonderful thing to hear.
yeah.
So,
I feel like this role. I feel like I was made to do this role.
so you've got two CE groups, and you and they're um, and definitely different challenges in each of them. because on the first one is the group that you built, and with your own two hands, which is everybody says a very, very difficult thing to do. So you went and did that, and your second CE group is a legacy group that you took over, that's been in continuous operation for 30 plus years.
Yes.
Contrast those things for me, and how and what that's been like for you, taking on the difference between building and running your own group and taking over this legacy group, which also had legacy members that had been there for decades. It's a very low number Vistage group, so it had been around a long time. But tell me about that.
Yeah. Um, Completely different experiences. And mostly, more than anything, it's the culture that's so very different. Um, I was able to build the culture like the leader of any organization. I built the culture of the first group, the group that I built. Um, I selected the members that I liked
Right.
and felt like we had a connection. Walking into, and I've only had 2 meetings so far with this legacy group. I did also have a key group in between. I want to just give a nod to those folks because they're amazing people, and they're still Vistage members, but we've made some transitional plans for them. But the it's can I say the group number? It's a really low
Yeah.
number.
103.
103, one of the first Vistage groups. And I have one member in there that's been in the group for 30 years. And most of the people have been over 10 years Vistage members. So they've got more Vistage experience than I do.
Right.
It's an interesting situation that they have their culture, and I want very much to honor their culture. And I want to help them build in areas where there's opportunity. So it's an interesting challenge. It's a lot of fun. I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm energized by it. I've also been able to bring 4 new members in to the group, some younger folks, which has energized the legacy members, and it's a lot of fun. I'm having a good time with it.
So, number one, what an honor to be to have been selected or asked, invited to do this. That obviously speaks volumes, about you and what people think of you. How did the group embrace you? What was that like the first time you turned up at a meeting?
Yeah. So, couple things. First of all, I'm the first female chair this group has had. I'm only the third chair that this group has had. So, the first chair had been with the group for 30 years until he retired, and then there was another chair for a couple of years, and now I'm the third chair. And the group did interview me and selected me.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was interesting.
So
So,
how
and
many chairs were interviewed for the role?
4 or 5. And I feel so honored and flattered that they would have chosen me. And it's so important to me that I give them the experience that they've come to expect and deserve.
That's amazing. How, and I know that you're only a couple months in, so there's still a lot of transition that I'm sure is still happening. Inheriting that group with obviously the established members, and this culture that had been percolating over 3 decades. How do you see? How do you go and say, okay, how am I going to bring my own flavor to this?
Mm. It's a great question, Eric. Um, so there are things that they do consistently and have always done. And as I said, I want to honor those things that are working for them. At the same time, I've learned a thing or two in the last 2.5 years about what works and what doesn't work. And I want to help invigorate the group a little bit, shake it up a little bit, get them thinking and making sure that nobody's on autopilot. So bringing some of the things that I've learned, both from my own experiences as well as talking to other chairs. We've got such an incredible chair community, and I learn so much every time I talk to another chair. So bringing some of those experiences in as well. And, as they say, keep, keep what you like and what's that, whatever that expression is. So it's been, and we talk about it. We talk about it as part of the group culture. Tell me what's worked. I just introduced something new to you all. What did you think about it? And do you want to keep doing it? Do you want to maybe tweak it, or do you want to forget about it altogether and try something else? And I'm very open to their feedback.
Has the cross-pollination gone both ways, where you learned something new from the legacy group that you're now incorporating into your original group?
Yes, and I've not necessarily incorporated it yet. There's a couple things. And I'm continuing to learn, and I want to make sure that I introduce it in a meaningful way. So like I said earlier, I'm only a couple meetings in, and I want to be sure that before I introduce anything big, that I have more experience with it.
Very cool and totally understandable. I have to ask you about the horse farm and how that came into your world. So you've got a horse farm with
Yes.
57 animals. Tell me about the animals.
Oh my God. Well, the bulk of those animals are chickens. So we've got about close to 40 chickens. We've got horses, donkeys, goats, cats, dogs, and then of course all of those amazing egg-laying chickens. It's a lot of fun. I'm really living my best life right now.
Is this something that you had always wanted to do? Was this like a bucket list type of goal for you, that one day you wanted to have this type of property?
No and yes. So I don't know that I consciously ever had the thought, I want to have a farm someday, and this was a goal that I had set out to do. I've always admired it. I am definitely much more of a country mouse than I am a city mouse. I like going to the city, but to visit, not to live. And so when I had my business, I wound up going to a 4-day work week at one point and needed to do something interesting with my time. And so I started volunteering at a horse rescue, and I hadn't been really around horses since I was a kid. I was horse crazy as a kid. And while I was at the rescue, I started riding and taking lessons on one horse in particular, fell in love with him, took a half lease on him, and wound up adopting him. When I adopted him, I wanted to bring him home, because what's the point of having a horse if you can't look out your window in the morning, having your coffee, and look at your horse? So I wound up bringing Romeo
Right.
to a horse farm.
So you needed a horse farm, really?
We were going to build something, my husband and I, and we happened to stumble upon this thing that is beautifully located, and it's bucolic, and it just gives me peace. And we're 5 or 10 minutes away from all of civilization, but it feels like we're in the middle of nowhere. It's perfect.
And does it, because you're also running an Airbnb out of that property, you're still being entrepreneurial. You
Yep. So
still have to have a business.
We board horses. We board horses on the farm, so it is a business. We've got 3 horses that we board. We've got the Airbnb. We sell eggs. My husband just put out an incredible vegetable garden this year. He built this huge garden, so next year we'll probably start selling vegetables. This year was kind of an experiment. So yeah, we've got a lot going on here.
That's so cool.
It's a busy, full life.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So
Not to mention kids and grandkids. Got that
too. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
everybody loves to come and see the horses. I'm sure that people are, the kids and grandkids especially are like, well, yeah, we want to go. Why not? They got horses and chickens. Where else are you going to get that?
It's a different kind of going to DG and Grandpa's house than many other kids would experience, I think.
Well, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest today. What is the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they have questions? About Vistage, obviously, but also, I suppose, horse ownership and if they want to go and stay with the horses, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So my email address is julianne.roth@Vistage Chair, and I'll spell that because Julianne's an unusual name. JulianneRoth@VistageChair.com. Or my phone number is 860-478-4445.
Thank you so much for being a great guest. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really have enjoyed it myself, and I appreciate you having this show. What a great thing.
Cool. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.